Yes, it is later. You're right. I'm wasting time. Next I see. See, when you see
Thank you, Corey. Good morning. My name is, I had to wait for you. My name is Elaine Faithful, and I serve on the Worship Associate team, and I am the president-elect of the board here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson. We are happy to see your faces, and so many faces this morning, of old and new friends gathered here today in celebration of a day that is almost clear of rain. Hopefully we'll make it through with a little bit of sunshine today. The Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson is not merely a tolerant community, but truly a welcoming congregation. We receive here gladly. You are received here gladly, regardless of your racial or ethnic background, your age, economic status, political affiliation, gender expression, or sexual orientation. Our diversity is what unites us and makes us wiser and stronger. If you would like more information about the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Clemson, I encourage you to check out our new website and to speak to the folks at the welcoming table out front. They'll be glad to provide you with information about what's coming up in the activities here at the UUFC, and also about any other information that you might need to know about programs that are going on. There are many spiritual paths in this world. You will find more than one here within this congregation. You will not be judged for your beliefs. In fact, here your choices are respected and allowed to flourish. I hope that today's service will fill a place inside of you that feels hungry for something deeper. Please accept our invitation to return not only next Sunday, but the Sundays that follow, because each Sunday is different and unique. I have a few announcements that I would like to make. Kathy Crane is not in here. She's back in the, oh, there she is. There she is. Would like to make an announcement about adult faith formation. We have some classes that are going to be coming up here in the fall. Spiritual, experiential exploration. That's a mouthful, Kathy. Who wrote that? Anyway, from September 18th to November the 6th, from 9:15 to 10:15 on Sunday mornings. The Unitarian Universalist history, if you want to know more about where we came from and how we got to where we are, will be on Mondays in October at 11 o'clock. On Mondays at 11 o'clock. And then on 9/16, Social Justice Happy Hour. This is when we gather together for snacks and drinks and we watch a movie. This particular movie will be Avatar, which has some surprisingly interesting things for topics of conversation.
Friday night.
This coming Friday night. I didn't have the date. Okay. All right. The Ministerial Search Committee, Karen York, if you'd like to make an announcement, please, ma'am.
I want to remind all members and friends to complete the search survey. This is a really important tool in helping the committee identify what it is that this congregation wants in a new minister. So your input is extremely important. You can access it through a link in the weekly connection. Our goal is to have this completed by September 18th, and that's next Sunday, so it's coming up quickly. I'll be available after the service if you have any questions, and I want to thank those of you who have already taken the time to do this for completing it. And Mel?
We also have flyers around the place that have tabs to take off, so if anybody wants the link, you can grab the flyers from there off the tabs.
it's also, yes, the link is also on the order of service at the bottom. So see me after the service if you have any questions. Thank you.
I'm going to say something, Karen, and I hope you will correct me if I'm wrong. We welcome not only members, but also friends and folks who are visiting with us to take the survey. Because if you're looking for a church community, you might have something to say.
The survey basically asks for input about the current situation.
The current situation, so
Kind of
it
like
takes
getting
knowledge.
About the church as it is now. So
Okay,
it's important
all right.
to know.
So I bumped a little bit far on that. And then finally,
About that, you might want to know if you're going to do it.
okay, we can't understand you, darling, so,
When you're going to do it, do the whole thing. Don't stop because it won't save your work. So
Yeah.
take your 30 minutes, gotta walk and do it. Because I started doing it and then stop and now I have to start over.
yeah. And it actually really doesn't take very long to do.
Will you repeat that so that people
Okay.
can hear you?
All right. What Meg was sharing with us is that as you start the survey, go on ahead and complete it. Make sure you got the time to complete it. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes to do. It's very simple questions. You just kind of check off and fill in, and but complete it in one sitting, because if you don't, it's when you go back, all that you've done already is going to be gone. So you'll have to start all over again. Elizabeth Branstead, there you are, my darling, has an announcement to make. We have a lot of important things going on right now. They just don't press me to get all the details correct.
And important people. Thank you. So how many of you have received your envelope in the mail? Oh, good, because that's a test of our postal system. So we expected that most of you would have received our mailing out yesterday or maybe on Monday. What this is, if you take a look at your bulletin, it says building community. And one of the essential ways of building community is by financing it, money. So what we're asking in this is that you make a commitment for the next 3 years, and it is just 3 years, 3 years, to say, this is how we want to finance our new ministry, and all of you are part of this ministry. It is more than having a special minister coming up. It is really saying how we want our ministry, all of us, to flourish in these next few years. So this is a commitment to say financially how you would like to be part of that. And if you have questions, I'd be happy to talk to them.
And it really doesn't matter how much you feel you can give. Every little bit is going to help towards this important goal. I'll invite you now to stand with me and sing hymn number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. Our opening words come this morning from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. We gather to draw a wider circle. In a world that feeds on moral outrage, we're here to cultivate moral courage. In a time that prizes picking sides, we gather to draw a wider circle. In a culture that teaches us to get what we give and to ask what's in it for me, We come together to practice generosity and to remember we are all in this together. In the midst of life's bitterness, we choose to sing and give thanks, to laugh together, to be keepers of beauty, to offer a place of belonging for all who come, in gladness and in pain, to resist the push to the next moment and the next to slow down, to breathe more deeply, to feel a part of something greater for this hour, in this space. Let us be changed. We wish to see, let us be the change we wish to see come. Let us worship together.
Hello, I'm Reverend Christina Branum-Martin, and I know most of you, although today I met a few new faces, and it's good to see you, and some friends I haven't seen in a while. It's nice to see you. And I am the interim minister here, and I want to make sure that it's really clear, especially to those who have just come. If the minister who's currently here is standing here in a robe and a stole, and yet we're talking about a new minister, what is that all about? Being an interim minister is a placeholder. It's a placeholder that allows for me to be with you as you journey from one settled minister into the next. And this time is a time for us to be creative, to be introspective, to look at who you are and what you want next. And luckily, I've had the joy of being with you for 3 years rather than 2, because that first year was pretty darn uneventful. 2020, when I started in August of 2020, it was me and the screen and Zoom meetings and a couple of in-person things, but I missed getting to know you. And so we are starting that 3rd year now, that 3rd year of looking with hope as to what comes next. And certainly a lot of that is fundraising for what's coming, but it's also surveys asking what you're needing, what you're hopeful for. And I am so proud to have been with you during this journey. So I hope that helps for those who walked in the door today wondering about that confusion. We have some shared chalice lighting words today. And now we are going to light some words from things adapted from Karen LeBlanc.
This isn't just a place of worship. This is a place to find a deeper connection with the divine, with the holy, and with the Most High.
This isn't just a fellowship of like minds. This is a fellowship of open minds and open hearts, eager to know each other and to embrace the blessing that is each other.
This isn't just a Sunday morning filled with spirit, topped off with coffee and cookies. It's a gathering of seekers hungry for truth and wisdom.
This is our fellowship, our congregation, where we are the beloved community.
Where we are opening ourselves to each other, where we trust and have love, rise and fall together.
This is where we feel safe. This is where we know we are welcomed.
This is where we belong. For this gift and so many others, we light our chalice.
The other thing we do each Sunday together is we read our words of affirmation that are printed on your order of service. Would you read them with me? We gather together in the spirit of love. with justice as our guide. This is our chosen covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth with freedom, and to care for one another. And now we've got a really cool story. And so if those of you who are young and young at heart would look to the screen, I want you to hear this cool story that Karen is going to introduce.
Good morning. I just want to say welcome everybody to what is our first official new children's religious exploration program year. We're finally back in business. We're only down one teacher because of illness, so we're getting off to our usual start. But today's story is also about new beginnings and new places. And it's kind of fitting, especially when I look out here and I see a lot of new faces, and I see some faces we haven't seen in a while, and I'm just so excited to have everybody back. So today's story is called My Two Blankets. Auntie used to call me Cartwheel. Then came the war. Auntie doesn't call me Cartwheel anymore. We came to this country to be safe. Everything was strange. The people were strange. The food was strange. The animals and the plants were strange. Even the wind felt strange. Nobody spoke like I did. When I went out, it was like standing under a waterfall of strange sounds. The waterfall was cold. It made me feel alone. I felt like I wasn't me anymore. When I was at home, I wrapped myself in a blanket of my own words and sounds. I called it my old blanket. My old blanket was warm. It was soft. It covered me all over. It made me feel safe. Sometimes I didn't want to go out. I wanted to stay under my old blanket forever. One day, a girl in the park smiled at me, and she waved. I wanted to smile back, but I was scared. I kept walking with Auntie. When I looked back, the girl waved again. Next time we went to the park, I looked for the girl. She wasn't there. We went back 3 times before I saw her again. She waved and smiled, and I felt warm inside. The girl came up to us and said something. Her words were strange. It was like being back under the cold waterfall. But the girl kept smiling. She took me to the swings. I got on and she pushed me higher and higher. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell her how glad I was that we were friends. But I didn't know how. When I went home, I hid under my old blanket. I wondered if I would always feel sad. I wondered if I would ever feel like me again. The next time I saw the girl, she brought some words for me. She made me say them over and over. Every time I met the girl, she brought me more words. Some of the words were hard. Some of them were easy. Sometimes I sounded funny and we laughed. Sometimes I felt silly and I wanted to cry. At night, when I lay in bed under my old blanket, I whispered the new words again and again. Soon, they didn't sound so cold and sharp anymore. They started to sound warm and soft. I was weaving a new blanket. At first, my new blanket was thin and small, but every day I added new words to it. The blanket grew and grew. I forgot about the cold and lonely waterfall. My new blanket grew just as warm and soft and comfortable as my old blanket. And now, no matter which blanket I use, I will always be me.
So one of the things that we forgot to mention, and I can say it now, it's cool, is today we're having lunch with the Hashimi family. And Shakarula Hashimi has been working here in our garden. And this is the second person that has been working in our garden that we have known who've been resettled here in Clemson as refugees. And Ajmal Nuristani was here first, but he ended up getting a full-time job in Henderson.
Right, but he is coming today.
And he's coming today.
Yes.
How wonderful. Well, Ajmal and Shakarullah are colleagues that work together in Afghanistan. And the Hashimi family, the wife, her name is? Farida. And their 4 children are coming for lunch. And can you tell me a little bit more, Meg, about what they're doing next? Because we're saying thank you today. Are we
Right.
saying goodbye?
No.
No, just saying-
Hashimi is here. Both of them are trying to find good jobs in agriculture, possibly. Hashimi is staying here. He's actually, I think, doing Uber and Lyft in the meantime. Ajmal has just gotten a new job at the research station in North Carolina. He was working in the field, and now he's going to be working in the lab. So he's doing that now, but that's still also temporary. So, and both are thinking about going back to school and getting PhDs, but they're going to have to get assistantship to be able to do that. So it's kind of up in the air right now. We're not sure yet. But Hashimi's going to be around, but he's just not going to be here.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I needed that clarity because I wanted to be able to know the timing of things. The lunch today is welcoming the families here into our community, and also a chance for us to show our gratitude and to acknowledge the relationships that we have been making with the families that are being resettled here in the Clemson area. In Greenville and Anderson and Clemson, there have been 23 families that have been resettled here. And I wanted to share this story today that we had up earlier to tie in that our community is broad, and the work that we do is important not just for what happens inside these walls, but also what happens with the community outside these walls, and that we are deeply connected. At this time, as we start our offering, would the children be willing to help gather the food and canned goods?
We first came in 2019 when we first moved to Clemson.
respect your privacy. Thank you. I see a lot of faces here today that have been visiting with us. I invite you, if you've been here one time before or even a couple of times before, please stand and introduce yourselves again for us. Because we
feel
don't,
so welcome.
if you feel comfortable and welcome to do so. We've got a lot of folks here that may not know you yet.
Or maybe next time.
Or maybe next time.
I'm Carrie Moss. This is my family, Jennifer Moss and Toby Moss.
Okay, we got
Last month from California.
Carrie and Jennifer and Cody. So glad to see you here again this Sunday. Anybody else that I'm missing? This stone we place in our bowl for all of our new and old friends. Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Hello? Hello? Okay. This one, I'm not sure who it comes from. It reminds us again of our potluck today to say that all are welcome. Let's remember that today is the 21st anniversary of the tragedy of 9/11, and this is to mark the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Carol Ward would like to recognize that my great niece, Kristen, got married in Virginia yesterday. Where's Carol? Carol, I saw you someplace. There you are. Okay. Sarah Summers and John Hoskins. Want to wave your hands for us? Have a joy. We are pleased to announce our upcoming marriage. It'll be here on October the 29th at 2 p.m. All are invited to share in our celebration of love and life. And no gifts, please. This stone's for you. And finally, we have one last stone that we place in our bowl for all of those folks who are holding their joys and concerns closer to the heart, and for those of our congregation and friends who are not here with us today.
And now we sing the children on and the teachers on the way.
I'm knocking on the house. Check, check. Oh, the summertime is coming, and the leaves sweetly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme blooms all around the purple heather. Where you go, lassie, go, and we'll all go together to pull wild mountain thyme all around the purple heather. Where you go, lassie, go. If my true love, she won't go, you know I'll surely find another to pull wild mountain thyme all around Heather, where you go? I see you go. And she won't go. No, I'll surely find another to pull wild mountain time all around. Purple heather, where you go? I see you go. And I will build my lovely tower at the foot of the fountain, and on I will put all the flowers of the mound. Purple heather, where you go? I see you go. Oh, the springtime is a-coming, and the weed blows sweetly singing, and the wild mountain thyme blooms all around. Purple heather, where you go? I see you go.
Thank you. Brought down the house. I'm going to take a deep breath and find, after that joy, an opportunity for us to come together in meditation and prayer. This day is simply one day on the calendar, the 11th day of September. Another beautiful day, hopefully with some sun later, on the cusp between summer and fall. And yet, this day, September 11th, will never be just another day on the calendar, as we remember the day of September 21 years ago. A day that began, like so many others, with people going about their ordinary day-to-day lives, and then in the brief span of hours, ended in shock and disbelief as airplanes became weapons of mass destruction and skyscrapers fell, and smoke and ash filled the air. A day that for many is painful to remember but impossible to forget. And so, we pause to remember. We remember with gratitude all of those heroes and heroines of that day, the firefighters, the emergency responders who demonstrated such courage in the midst of crisis. We remember those in sorrow, with sorrow, the innocent people who perished. And we remember with hope the voices that called for unity in face of division and hatred, and urged peace, even as the drum beats of war sounded around our country. We remember in bewilderment the ways that the events of that day changed who we were as a nation and continued to direct us for decades to follow. And we remember that that day that began with such terror and violence, and all that transpired since then, is an invitation to rededicate ourselves today to raising our voices against fanaticism, religious intolerance, racism, violence, and terror, and hatred in all of its forms, and doing whatever we can to create a future in which all people can live in freedom, community, and peace, and without fear. May it be so because we make it so. Let us take a moment to sit in silence together. Thank you. What beautiful gifts of music we have today. Thank you so much. Remember when rolls of film would have the stamps of the day and year on it? I have some photos of me and my family from 21 years ago that have some date stamps on them. This is me 21 years ago with my daughter, who's now 22. This one is marked September 8th, 2001. It was a Saturday night, and I was at my cousin's wedding in Boston, and my 13-month-old daughter was asleep on my lap. And I had flown to Boston with my mother, my sister, my daughter, my uncle, and me. This is us actually on the plane the next day going home from Boston. My uncle took the photo of us. On Tuesday morning, I awoke to what seemed like a normal day of taking care of a toddler and preparing for work. But the news of what was happening in New York and Washington, D.C. and Pennsylvania changed everything. You can see 9/11/01 on the corner. That day, what was happening clouded our hearts and our minds, and I thought of the reality that we were on a plane 48 hours before leaving Boston with 5 members of our family. And I know that my fear at remembering that compares nothing to those who actually lost family, but it still chokes me up when I think about it. So we had to do that day. We cared for our family and played music on our measuring cups and let our daughter play with the magnets on the fridge. Our daughter was not aware that the world was changing around her that day. Most of us in here probably remember where we were on that moment when we learned of what was happening. For that terrifying day, many lives were lost, and our sense of community and security were impacted. It truly was a fearful time for us in this country. We heard over and over that day and for months and years to come, nothing would ever be the same. Yes, everything did change because we as Americans, especially in these generations where we are younger and we have not experienced war in our lives, we lost our sense of security on the land in which we live. Lynn Unger, a Unitarian Universalist colleague and a poet, wrote about it this way. She says, on 9/11, the U.S. suffered the same kind of loss as countries that have been ravaged by war for various kinds of religious and nationalistic violence that had devastated communities all around the world for centuries. All the years before, we had read about Bosnia or Palestine or Libya and thought, oh, those poor people. And then we went on with our lives without much changing. And violence on that scale was a tragedy, but it was not our tragedy and not something that would touch our daily lives like 9/11 did. She continues, that's how we got through the immense hardships of the world. We all know that people have lost their dearest ones to murder and violence, to heart attacks and cancer, or even the sudden onslaught of an accident. And our heart aches at those times, but it doesn't break because we hold on to that illusion that those things are far away and they won't happen to us. And we can't imagine living without. Or it won't happen to the ones who we love that we can't imagine living without. We can't afford for everything to be different anytime that tragedy strikes around us, or we won't be able to function, she says. And so our prayer to comfort for the bereaved is always secretly a prayer of thanks that this time we were spared. But the eventual lightning strike does strike sometimes at home, and we are close enough to be singed. And it turns out that we are not immune. We are not protected by God or our virtue or our customary privilege of being a part of the United States. And when the World Trade Center buildings came down, many of us felt our own personal defenses crumble with them. And everything changed because we had come face to face with the reality that loss on such a grand scale really could camp out on our doorway. And then we had to figure out how to respond. We had to decide, if we would build back our own defenses through going on attack, following the illusions that we could simply exterminate everyone who is a possible threat in the world? Would we declare that some set of people were bad so that we could recreate our illusion of safety by locking those people literally or metaphorically away? Would we build more walls? Would we choose safety over freedom? Aggression over attentive listening? Why, yes, we would, and we did. Because our leaders and many Americans decided that anything was better than simply dwelling with the knowledge that we were not safe, and that the horrors which befall any of us could befall all of us, that lurks around the corner. And of course, we wanted to hold on to any measure of security we could find. But after all these years, I hope that we can search for a security with a greater measure of rationality and perhaps a greater measure of compassion that we were able to muster in the wake of the burning towers. And I hope that we can remember some of the things we have learned in that painful experience of the intervening years. What happened since then is we learned that striking back at the wrong targets doesn't help. That the enemy of the bad guys isn't necessarily the good guy. It's complicated, it's complex, and it is far easier to respond than to control the effects of the response, and that complex problems don't always have simple solutions. Lynn Unger states this beautiful statement that really touches my heart. Ultimately, our greatest security lies not in any of our attempts to make sure that tragedy never strikes, but rather in our ability to hold and help and care for one another when hard times come. Since 2001, it is estimated that 243,000 people in Afghanistan and Pakistan died in the war zone. That includes soldiers of all of the lands, including our own, and 70,000 estimated civilians died of those lands. I find this heartbreaking. If, as Lynn Unger declares, that our greatest security lies in our ability to hold and help and care for one another when hard times come, let us be reminded today of what can be done here in our lives and in our community, in the Clemson area and in the part of the world that we call home. There was a quilt made in 2011 here in the Clemson area that was for an event called Looking Back, Looking Forward. It was an interfaith gathering. And a quilt was made, and there was an invitation for those who were there to sign a charter of compassion. The quilt was shared by Cynthia Warner with our congregation, and I hung it up last year on the 20th anniversary. And the interfaith and community leaders that gathered asked for people to commit to this principle of compassion that lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions. It calls us always to treat each other as we wish to be treated ourselves. Compassion impels us to alleviate the suffering of others, born of deep interdependence Compassion is essential in human relationships. It is a path to enlightenment and indispensable to the creation of a peaceful global community. And on that day, when they signed the quilt, they said, "We pledge in both public and in private life to act in accordance with the principle of compassion." As we were talking about earlier, 23 families from Afghanistan were settled in this area since March. So this community, and including UUFC, has had the opportunities to be in relationship with those who are settled here. And we, as UUs, try to understand the complexities of life and try to hold the principles of our faith as it guides us through the complexity of moving forward in a time of understanding the tragedy of September 11th, all the decades that followed, and the invitation to peace and love and compassion since. Our story that we shared earlier about the 2 blankets is about a child seeking a new way to make a home in a new place, out of a new language. Even the wind felt uncomfortable to her, she said. I think it is important and significant today that we are to share a meal and break bread with families who have been resettled here. May we offer them radical hospitality. So on this day, I rededicate myself to work for compassion, for peace, and offering radical welcome whenever I can. And I invite you to do so with me. May we move forward with a spirit of renewal and commitment to the principles that guide us not only as Unitarian Universalists, but as human beings living in a global community. I hope you'll join me with that work. Let us close with the song, "Come Sing a Song With Me," number 346. Stand if you'd like. Go ahead and have a seat if you will, because we're going to listen to Corey play some music in a minute. Let me close with these words. The words that we came to today were about love and compassion compassion and opening our hearts to others, and being a part of building a community here within these walls and also beyond these walls to the community in which we are so connected. As we've come to the end of our worship service today, I hope that you also arrive at the week coming of your own ministry, of being involved in your own life with love and compassion. I hope that the service this morning was meaningful for you and that you leave here with a sense of connection and possibility.